All right. Hello. Good evening. Welcome back to another Classic Comics live cast. All right. I guess I'll just go ahead and dive into it here. So I'm going to start off with the first story. Let me bring this up here. And this is kind of a Superman heavy stream this week because there's a good deal of Superman related stuff. All right. So we had this trailer. I mean, it wasn't really even a trailer. It was a bit of footage, a few seconds of footage that was like thrown in with a trailer, the previous trailer, that has Superman flying. And of course, it has that image that's in the thumbnail. And this has caused a stir. This story is from comicbook.com. Superman movie flight scene divides DC fans. James Gunn responds. James Gunn's Superman is one of the most highly anticipated movies of 2025 and one of the most hotly debated. Not only does Gunn have to reintroduce a new version of Clark Kent slash Superman, played by actor David Cornswet, but the entire future of the new DC Studios and its DC franchise is relying on this movie. It shouldn't surprise anyone then that every bit of footage from Gunn's film is being weighed against Snyder's DCEU debut film, Man of Steel, including the latest TV spot, which features the first close-up footage of Cornswet's Superman in flight. Now, even fans of the CW's Arrowverse are weighing in on whether Gunn's Superman can outdo the likes of Superman and Lois. Yeah, there you see the image there. The image above is from the latest Superman TV spot, which was released during the NFL Conference Championship games. Fan chat threads quickly bent toward the conspiracy theory that Cornswet's face had been altered with CGI to simulate realistic in flight physics. That notion led to a wider range of criticism about the 2 seconds of footage about whether or not Gunn is making a Superman movie that is worthy of the big screen and of a big budget. Okay. Man of Steel was over 10 years ago, and it still looks light years better than James Gunn's Superman, said one DC fan in a Twitter post, adding, the downgrade is diabolical. I'm sure this guy's not a Snyder fan, right? Not a big Snyder fan. Another post stated that Gunn's Superman film is getting mogged by a Superman CW show with 1/20th of the budget, while showcasing a GIF of Tyler Hoechlin's Superman in flight during an episode of Superman and Lois. There are now entire chat threads filled with side-by-side videos of James Gunn's Superman in flight compared to footage of Henry Cavill's Superman or Hoechlin's Superman. Despite many positive takes on the footage, get rid of that. There is still a dedicated consensus in the criticisms of the footage that Gunn's take on Superman is too bright, too colorful, and too CGI heavy, and is worse than the modern live action versions of Superman we've gotten before. On the other hand, many positive counterpoints are being made by fans, like the fact that Gunn is the first modern Superman movie director to actually take the physics of in flight hair into consideration. Quote, finally, a Superman scene where his hair actually flows in the wind, unlike the usual super speed flies where it stays perfectly gelled, barely moving, like he's in front of a table fan. One fan posted before adding, quote, James Gunn is a goat. Viewer opinions can often be changed once set, or can't often be changed once set. So getting Snyderverse or Arrowverse fans to suddenly embrace what James Gunn is doing with his Superman is a somewhat futile battle. However, Gunn did take to his social media account to debunk any assertions that Cornswet's face was CGI or AI created during Superman's flight scenes. Quote, there is absolutely zero CG in his face, Gunn wrote in a post. People's faces can look different when you put a wide angle lens up close. Yeah. The footage, the background played in Svalbard is 100% real, as is David. This isn't the first time that Gunn has hopped into the fan discourse about Superman with some film school style technical clarifications. The first Superman trailer sparked widespread debate about the color palettes and production design of the film, even some chatter and confusion about the type of camera lenses being used and what kind of shot composition we will get in the film. As we previously stated, there's clear evidence that Gunn is using dynamic, shifting color tones and realist or stylistic flares like wide-angle wide-angle lens shots to immerse viewers in a modern yet fantastical DCU world, while trying to have them experience Superman's godly powers like never before. Whether or not every fan embraces that vision remains to be seen, and this likely won't be the last time that shade gets thrown about Gunn's skills as a filmmaker or ability to pull off a game-changing Superman reboot. Yeah. Okay. Also, I need to say hail to FKHC 2005. Hello, sir. Thank you for stopping by. It's good to see you. And thank you for subbing earlier. I do appreciate that. Okay, so this is, this is just silly. Honestly, this is a nothing burger. Uh, this is 2 seconds of freaking footage, and I just don't see what the big deal is. Personally, I mean, I wouldn't say it looks fantastic, but it's not like it looks horrible. I do think that his face does look a little different. I just, like he said in the article, I think it's the lens he's using. I think it's kind of making his eyes seem like further apart than they would normally be, and his nose wider than it would normally be, something like that. I'm not sure. But people making such a fuss about this is kind of silly. As with that first comment, I suspect that some of the people that are criticizing this and saying it's not as good as Man of Steel are, Snyder Bros who just have it in for this movie and in for James Gunn anyway. And nothing he does is going to please them. I mean, I haven't compared it to the Arrowverse stuff, so I mean, I don't know what to say about that. I'd say it looks okay, not great, but okay. It's not something where I'm panicking, saying, "Oh my God, this movie's going to be horrible." And yeah, I mean, this is just a controversy that I just don't see what the point of it is. Okay, what do we got next? Okay, now this is certainly more interesting. And this is also from comicbook.com. Superman's estate suing to deny release of James Gunn's movie in certain territories. Warner Brothers Discovery and DC Entertainment DC Comics are being sued by the estate of Superman creator Joseph Schuster to block the release of the upcoming movie by James Gunn in several territories. The lawsuit was filed today by the executor of the Superman estate, plaintiff Mark Warren Peary, in the Southern District of New York. The suit states the estate is seeking, quote, damages and injunctive relief for defendants' ongoing infringement in Canada, the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Australia, as well as declaratory relief establishing the Schuster estate's ownership rights across relative jurisdictions. The matter is ripe for adjudication as defendants are actively planning a major new Superman motion picture and other derivative works for imminent worldwide release. We fundamentally, quote, we fundamentally disagree with the merits of the lawsuit and will vigorously defend our rights, a Warner Brothers Discovery spokesperson said in response. We learned that the territories in question are Canada, the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Australia. Quote, at issue are foreign copyrights to the original Superman character and story, co-authored on spec by Jerome Siegel and Joseph Schuster. Though Siegel and Schuster assigned worldwide Superman rights to DC predecessors in 1938 for a mere $130, $65 each. The copyright laws of countries with the British legal tradition, including Canada, the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Australia, I would think South Africa is probably in there too, contain provisions automatically terminating such assignments 25 years after an author's death, vesting in the Schuster estate the co-author's undivided copyright interest in such countries. Schuster died in 1992, Siegel in 96. By operation of law, Schuster's foreign copyrights automatically reverted to his estate in 2017 in most of these territories and in 2021 in Canada. Yet defendants continue to exploit Superman across these jurisdictions without the Schuster estate's authorization, including in motion pictures, television series, and merchandise in direct contravention of these countries' copyright laws, which require the consent of all joint copyright owners to do so. Okay, well, I'll say up front, I'm hardly a legal expert. It does seem, hello, Dave C. Good to see you, sir. Hail, everyone, stopping by to say hello. I thought at first I wanted to see Superman. Now, not so much. I still do want to see it. It's one of the few movies I'm actually kind of looking forward to, somewhat hesitantly. There's just not that much that interests me beyond Superman and I don't know what Fantastic Four, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear the families of Schuster, the family of Joseph Schuster, they're trying to get some money out of this, which I understand it. They got screwed over by DC Comics many, many years ago. They did get some money back. I think back in the early '80s, I think there was a lawsuit that got them some compensation, but not a lot. So, I mean, personally, I would be hope that they will be able to get something out of this, but whether that's going to work or I don't know. I guess the basic point here is that by British law, the copyrights have DC's copyright has expired on this, and therefore it should go back to the family, and they should be getting more money out of this. I guess they'll just have to wrestle this out in court. Like I say, I don't know how the British law is going to work here, if that how that applies as far as American copyright law. You would think, I don't know, maybe since this was done in America, maybe American copyright law would take precedent. I don't know. But I do hope that they will get something about it. I do know that this is like the just awful timing for DC Studios and for Warner Brothers. It's like, this is the last thing they needed. DC on screen. I mean, let's face it. DC needs a win. They need some kind of a win in theaters, and this is probably their best shot of doing it anytime soon. And the last thing they needed was this lawsuit. It's just, I'm sure the people at Warner Brothers are just like, Jesus. And you wonder why they didn't do it sooner. Well, let me think. So they said it was in 2017. Yeah, so I guess by 2017, after 2017, I guess they really didn't do much with Superman, did they? Because Cavill he'd already done Man of Steel and BVS, and I think 2017 is when Justice League came out. So I guess, I mean, you've got the Snyder Justice League that was put on Netflix, but other than that, he's just had like a couple of cameos. So I guess that's why they didn't move on this sooner. Yeah, just oh boy. It's like Warner Brothers and DC can't win for losing sometimes. Okay, now while I thought the whole flight footage thing was kind of a silly controversy, here's one's a little more. I mean, I can see why it's a controversy. I don't think it's a big deal personally, but I can see why some people might. So this is from Game Rant. Anthony Mackie causes a stir online with recent comments on Captain America. Okay, as Captain America: Brave New World inches closer to its theatrical release, and talk about a studio that doesn't need this hassle and doesn't need this headache right now. As Captain America: Brave New World inches closer to its theatrical release in February, the film's leading man has found himself in a bit of a PR pinch regarding some comments he made about one of the character's foundational qualities. Captain America: Brave New World has faced a lot of criticism and controversy over its production, and things haven't let up by much now that it's less than a month away from release. Talk of reshoots and rewrites leading to so many changes that one prominent performer confirmed they'd been totally cut from the project, as well as rumors of a massively overreaching budget for the whole thing, has led to a lot of negative discourse surrounding the film. All this stands in the way of the film's plot, excuse me, which already has a lot to live up to, and the added challenge of cementing Anthony Mackie as the new Captain America. While the film and Mackie are already dealing with a lot, including the fairly popular idea that Captain America Brave New World is inevitably going to be bad, the man behind the mask and shield has yet another issue to address in the lead up to the premiere. At a recent sit down event promoting the upcoming film, Mackie spoke on what he believed Captain America should represent. Quote, Captain America represents a lot of different things, and I don't think the term America should be one of those representations, Mackie explained. Quote, it's about a man who keeps his word, who has honor, dignity, and integrity, someone who is trustworthy and dependable, unquote. While the statement seems to be an insistence on expanding on the values behind the character as opposed to trying to minimize the link to America, and Mackie immediately pivots to discussing how the film is a dream come true for him and how that feeling feeds to his work as an actor. The internet was immediately set fire. As has become routine at this point, the perceived anti-American sentiment from someone prominently involved in the Captain America project really blew out of proportion. Despite the tame origins of the controversy, things did heat up on social media enough to eventually merit a response from Anthony Mackie on Instagram. And this is post here. Let me be clear about this. I'm a proud American, and taking on the shield of a hero like Cap is the honor of a lifetime. I have the utmost respect for those who serve and who have served our country. Cap has universal characteristics that people all over the world can relate to. Responding to the controversy via a text post on his Instagram. Okay, that's just rehashing the post. This is pretty much what a segment of the fan base already said in defense of Mackie's statements and a view on the character. And it seems to line up just fine with his original comments. It's not the first time that Mackie has had to clear the air on the controversy surrounding Captain America 4 recently, but it is the first and probably last considering the film releases in less than a month. Controversy stemming from something he said himself. All right, hold on just a moment. Okay, I needed a little water. Okay, heroes like Captain America have a universal appeal that people of any nationality can aspire to. And while these values are foundationally American, that doesn't mean that America has to be the label they're presented under to everyone. It's also worth noting that the MCU is an international franchise, as evidenced by the awesome tie posters for Captain America Brave New World that gives the character a localized flair to stellar effect. Huh, let's take a look at that. Is that down here? All right, well, I'll come back to that. It's like loading slowly. The inspiration behind the characters is very prominently displayed in his name and on his uniform, and previous films in the franchise have done a lot to establish just how American Cap is. Mackie's view then seems to be reiterating what so many comics have done in the past. Captain America represents the ideal values of the founding fathers and the country they built, even when the country itself doesn't. This is very clearly also a plot point in the upcoming film, which sees a Hulk-sized presence in the White House and manipulation from unknown forces. While it would have been a better outcome if people took Mackie's comments in good faith instead of reading them as anti American, it's a good move to clear the air so this doesn't affect people's enjoyment of the movie. Captain America Brave New World's box office predictions allow for some cautious optimism about the film's success, but it's a fragile thing, and the cast, crew, and executives attached at Marvel Studios could certainly do without any extra strain on the film's premiere success. Yeah, no kidding. So is this loaded here? Oh, there it is. I mean, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't love it, but it's not bad. That actually looks pretty cool. I kind of like that one. Okay, yeah, that's kind of nifty. So again, I feel like this is way overblown because I mean his statements. I mean both the statements, both the first one and then the later one. I think he could have worded it better, but like they said in the article, I think what he's saying here is that I don't know. I think you always get into an issue because you can when you conflate the government with the country. And in the comics, they've repeatedly made it clear Cap represents the country. He does not represent the government necessarily. I mean, he does, but he will break with the government when he feels it's warranted. He doesn't always just toe the line. And I feel like that's kind of what Mackie was getting at. I think he didn't maybe word it the best way. Um, but I think again, kind of like with the flight footage, this is just people are way overreacting to this and making way too big a deal of it. And I mean, look, I don't know how it's going to affect the movie. As they say in the article, I think this movie's probably kind of doomed either way. And I mean, obviously, this doesn't help, but I don't think this is going to sink the movie. I think it was it was kind of sunk beforehand. Um, because I mean, look at the statement. I mean, there's nothing, I don't see anything wrong with what he's saying. Like I say, I think he didn't word it well. And because of that, it came across sounding maybe more anti American than it was meant to, or something like that. But that's kind of my takeaway from it. And while I don't have high expectations for this movie personally, but it would be unfortunate if this controversy kind of wound up playing a big role in the movie's success, which I don't think it will. By the time the movie comes out, I don't know, most people probably won't even remember this. Okay. Another Superman related story. Let's bring this up. And again, this is from thatparkplace.com. Conflicting reports on Superman test screenings cast doubt on quality of James Gunn's first DC film. And I was going to do a story about this, I think around the beginning of the new year, because it just seemed like there were so many conflicting stories. You'd see stories, oh, test screenings went horribly, and then you'd have other stories, oh, test screenings went great, and I wound up not doing that at the time, but I think we'll go ahead and take a look at it now. If you've been following reports of Superman test screenings, you'll know that they're anything but straightforward. First, it was said to be the worst thing ever, a surefire bomb. Then it was said the movie is a triumph akin to Gunn's major Marvel victories. Then a report from Matt McGloin of Cosmic Book News completely debunked that report, once again casting doubt on the film's quality. Here's a breakdown of the timeline and differing accounts regarding the film's reception so far. The initial report, things aren't looking good. The controversy began when Hollywood insider Jeff Snyder shared some troubling updates on his podcast, The Hot Mic. According to Snyder, the initial test screenings for Superman Legacy yielded overwhelmingly negative reactions. Quote, the buzz is not good. I'm hearing bad things, Snyder stated. I'm hearing you should be worried. That report further suggested that these negative reactions were, quote, franchise killing bad, unquote. Mm. Snyder mentioned that James Gunn was, quote, aware of some of the feedback, unquote, and noted that the production was heading back for additional photography. While Gunn downplayed these reshoots as standard pickup shots, Snyder argued there were, quote, plenty of reasons to be nervous, unquote. The insider's claims quickly caught fire, sparking speculation about whether the project can meet fans' high expectations. The counterclaim: Guardians of the Galaxy level good. Not long after Snyder's bleak assessment, a more optimistic report surfaced. According to sources cited by comicbookmovie.com, early feedback from the film was overwhelmingly positive. The tone of Superman Legacy was reportedly described as being similar to Captain America, the First Avenger, and The Mummy. The most glowing praise came from insiders who likened the movie to Gunn's own Guardians of the Galaxy. Superman was described as Guardians of the Galaxy level good, and while some of the VF effects were unfinished, a lot of the shots were polished enough with 7 months to go. The report by Mark Cassidy stated those in attendance reportedly loved the movie. Despite this more favorable perspective, comicbookmovie.com cautioned that both positive and negative reactions could coexist. Films often receive mixed early feedback, and only time will tell how the finished product would resonate with audiences. And I think I said at the time, I think I reported on the initial negative report, or not reported on it, but I talked about it. I mean, I'm not a journalist. And I think at the time I said that, I don't know, it felt like this was maybe some Snyder Bros kind of basically trying to kind of salt the earth, basically, kind of ahead of time, so that to kind of just get everyone to think this thing's horrible. And I like, again, with the flight footage, I'm sure it's the that crowd that is being the most negative and making the biggest deal about it. Cosmic Book News debunks the optimism. The pendulum swung back yet again when Cosmic Book News challenged the validity of the optimistic report. Site founder Mac McGloin argued that the supposed test screenings described by comicbookmovie.com likely never happened. Quote, a fan user on Comic Book Movie wrote up a fan article claiming a test screening was held for James Gunn's Superman movie, with the reactions said to be Guardians of the Galaxy level good, unquote, McGloin wrote. Quote, the site does use fan editors, but the possible bogus rumor seems to have somehow gotten past them. Anyone can post articles on the site. So, for example, whenever there is an NFL game or such, someone posts pirate links or pirates to pirate sites. So just anyone can post a story on Cosmic Book News? I didn't know that. McGloin then pointed to insider viewer Anon, who claimed that any screenings of Superman Legacy had been internal at Warner Brothers, not public. Quote, any and all Superman test screenings so far, I don't know how many have taken place, have been internal, unquote. Viewer Anon stated, even by test screening standards, take any leaks from internal screenings, positive or negative, with a huge grain of salt. Viewer Anon further explained that public test screenings, which are easier to verify, would have generated more concrete reactions. They also noted that internal screenings are often more prone to unverifiable speculation. To bolster his argument, McGloin reminded readers of past instances where internal screenings led to exaggerated hype, such as claims of a standing ovation for Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Yeah, I remember that. Oh, where does that leave us? The conflicting reports leave fans in limbo. On one hand, Snyder's initial warning paints a grim picture for Superman. On the other, the glowing feedback cited by comicbookmovie.com suggests a far more positive reception. Yet, with Cosmic Book News debunking the latter claim and viewer non questioning the existence of public test screenings altogether, there's little concrete evidence to confirm either narrative. Yeah, I'm guessing the more positive report is, like he suggests, is probably made up. It's probably not real. It's probably someone who's a big fan of James Gunn who wants this movie to succeed, or maybe just a big Superman fan. I guess that's possible too, and made up this fake report to kind of counter the negative uh, hype that was coming out. For now, all fans can rely on is the overwhelming enthusiasm generated by the film's trailer, which broke records with over 22.6 million views in 24 hours. As for the final verdict on Superman, audiences will have to wait until its release next summer. Okay, so, and like they say, early test screenings, there's always rumors flying around. So, not sure what to think. Will it be, as good as Guardians of the Galaxy? I would say probably not the first one. If it could get up to the level of 2 or 3, I think it would be doing pretty well. The first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, it was such a lightning in a bottle thing, you know, and it's hard to believe that he could really capture that same feel and have the same success with it. Okay. Hey, Jay Rocker. Good to see you. Thank you for stopping by. Okay. All right. Oh, okay. Let me do this one. Yeah. I got another story here. Another Superman related story. And this is from the New York Post. Smallville actor Tom Welling arrested for DUI in an Arby's parking lot. Tom Welling, best known for his portrayal of a young Superman on the TV series Smallville, was taken into custody in Eureka, California. Is that how you say that? For a DUI. The 47-year-old actor was arrested in an Arby's parking lot by officers from the Eureka Police Department shortly after midnight on Sunday, January 26. The Siskiyou County Sheriff's Office confirmed to the Post on Tuesday. Welling was booked for misdemeanor driving under the influence with a blood alcohol level at or above 0.08%. TMZ was the first to report the news. The Post obtained the star's booking sheet, which described him as having a, quote, clear complexion with stubble and short hair and weighing 240 pounds. Dang, he wears 240 pounds? Man, has he put on weight? The document also notes that his speech was clear and lists his occupation as actor self-employed. Okay, so his speech wasn't slurred. Welling was cited and released without bail shortly after 7 a.m. local time on Sunday. The Post has reached out to a rep for Welling. On Sunday, the actor took to Instagram celebrating the birthday of his wife, Jessica Rose Lee Welling. Quote, happy birthday to our angel who makes our dreams come true and inspires us even more. He captioned a series of photos of Jessica. Quote, we love you to the moon and back. Tom and Jessica married in 2019 at a vineyard in Santa Ynez, California, after dating for 5 years. The couple shared 2 children, sons Thomas Thompson Wild, 6, and Rockland Vaughn, 3. Welling and Jessica live in Eureka, which is about 16 miles south of the California-Oregon border. Jessica has her home location listed as Northern California in her Instagram bio. For his part, Welling said the couple owns a ranch in Northern California. Welling rose to fame playing a young Clark Kent on Smallville, which ran for 10 seasons between 2001 and 2011. The Superman origin story series debuted on the WB network before it merged with UPN to form the CW in 2006. The heartthrob has also made more memorable appearances in Steve Martin's Cheaper by the Dozen, and in movies Lucifer, Draft Day, The Choice, The Fog, Batwoman, and The Winchesters, to name a few. Recently, Welling revealed that for the first time since Smallville ended, he's interested in stepping back into Superman's shoes. Well, you probably had a better chance of that before this happened. I think because of the 2 boys that I have with my lovely wife, we have a bunch of costumes at home, he told comicbookmovie.com. It started out at the first Halloween, and now we have, I don't know, 40 or 50 costumes. The one we don't have is a Superman costume. I asked my son why, and he said, because it's taken. And I said, by who? And he said, by you. That was like, all right, okay, I think I'm open to the idea now. So if you know anybody, I think it would be great. I think it would be fun to be a part of. Okay, so again, obviously a DUI, never a good thing. But I think this is just more embarrassing more than anything else. Because they say in it, I mean, 0.08, that's not good, but it's not like he was sloppy drunk. They do say his speech was clear. He wasn't slurred. He didn't seem to be impaired much. He blew hot on the breathalyzer. But man, 240 pounds. Man, he must be a bigger guy than I realized. And hopefully this won't have a too adverse an effect on his career. Okay. All right. Where are we at? 35 minutes. Okay. All right. Now, this next one is from Variety. All right. Lanterns, HBO's DC Studio series casts Ulrich Thompson as Sinestro. The upcoming HBO series Lanterns has cast a major DC villain. Variety has confirmed that Ulrich Thompson has joined the Green Lantern series in the recurring role of Sinestro. He will appear alongside previously announced leads Kyle Chandler and Aaron Pierre in the series, as well as cast members Kelly MacDonald, Garrett Dillahunt, and Purna Jagannathan. Garrett Dillahunt's in it. Okay, gee, let me guess. He's going to play a serial killer. How much you want to bet? Or a murderer, some deranged murderer, or something like that, probably. Per the official logline, the show follows, quote, new recruit John Stewart and the Lantern legend Hal Jordan, two intergalactic cops drawn into a dark Earth-based mystery as they investigate a murder in the American heartland, which is just what you want in a Green Lantern story, right? You want him poking around Nebraska or something, chasing a serial killer. I mean, I mean, how long have we wanted a good detective story from Batman? And they don't really give it to us. They kind of did. At least made some effort towards that in the Batman movie, but not really. I mean, kind of, sort of. And here they are saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to do this show that's going to be a detective story, a detective procedural, and it's Green Lantern." Uh, just what are you doing? Sinestro is a longtime figure in the Green Lantern world. The character was formerly a member of the Green Lantern Corps before he was kicked out for abusing his power. He originally debuted in 1961 in the comic books. He was previously portrayed by Mark Strong in the 2011 Green Lantern film and has been voiced by numerous actors in various animated projects over the years. Yeah, that was the biggest disappointment of that Green Lantern movie failing, is that we didn't get more Mark Strong as Sinestro, because he was just perfect. I mean, just note perfect for that character. He was so good, so good. And this guy, Ulrich Thompson, he's going to have big shoes to fill. He's going to have to be really good to sell me that he's Sinestro, because uh, Mark Strong was just so damn good in that movie. The official description of the character states, ruthless yet undeniably charming, Sinestro is a former Green Lantern who turned rogue. Sinestro's manipulative nature drives his enduring obsession with his former mentee, Hal Jordan. Thompson has primarily appeared in Danish productions during his career, but has previously starred in American series like Banshee at Cinemax and has appeared in other shows like The Blacklist, Counterpart, and The New Pope. His American film roles include the James Bond film The World Is Not Enough. I wonder what he was in that. And The International. He's also well known for starring in the Danish film Festen. He is rep by Green Talent, Link Entertainment, and Accelerate. Lanterns is produced by HBO in association with Warner Brothers Television and DC Studios. It was picked up for 8 episodes at HBO in June 2024. Originally intended as a Max original, the show shifted to HBO as part of a new content delineation plan. Lanterns is co-written by Chris Mundy, Damon Lindelof, and Tom King. Boo. All three serve as executive producers, along with James Hawes, with Hawes also directing the first 2 episodes. Ron Schmidt is also an executive producer. HBO produces in association with Warner Brothers Television and DC Studios. Yeah, and that's why this right here, this is why I expect this show to suck and not be good. And actually, I'm just going to go ahead and mention it right now. This is something I thought about a while back. I'm going to go ahead and predict they're going to kill Hal Jordan in this show. I will guarantee you. By the end of the first season, Hal Jordan is going to be dead. And then they'll continue the show just with Jon Stewart. I guarantee you that's what they're thinking. I guarantee you that's what they're going to freaking do. It's Tom King, Damon Lindelof. They cannot wait to get the white guy out of there and get rid of him. So if it happens, hey, you heard it here first. Okay, 40 minutes. I got a few more here. But I'm. Oh yeah, let me do this one. Okay, this is from GeekTyrant.com. All right. Marvel Studios reportedly eyeing Power Pack and Kid Kaiju for animated movies. After Disney acquired Marvel in 2009, I thought we'd see more animated Marvel movies made. Okay, don't jump around. There we go. While there have been animated shows, I was hoping that we'd see more animated stories told on the big screen, but the only one we've gotten is Big Hero 6, which was great. Now, thanks to Scooper Daniel Richtman, we've learned that what Kevin Feige and the team might be cooking up in terms of animated films. Marvel Studios is reportedly considering centering an animated film project. Will you stop jumping around? Around Power Pack and Kid Kaiju. Power Pack is a team of young siblings, Alex, Jack, Julie, and Katie Power, who gain superpowers after meeting an alien scientist. This chameleon passes his powers to the kids to help them protect their planet from an alien race called the I don't know if I'm saying that right. As for Kid Kaiju, aka Kai Kawade, Kai is a young artist living, or is it K? I think that's K. K Kawade. K is a young artist living in Atlanta whose latent inhuman genes are activated by the Terrigen cloud, giving him the incredible ability to summon the monsters he draws. K's adventures typically feature him alongside massive creatures like Fin Fang Foom, Gorgilla, and Zutak. This is such a fun character, and his stories would work perfectly for an animated film. He could be a wild and chaotic adventure film. This move into animated film feels like a natural direction for Marvel, and I'm surprised they haven't been making animated films all along. There's an opportunity here to tell stories that don't need to fit into the live action MCU and that could thrive in animation. Marvel Studios stepping into animating movies would open up even more creative possibilities for them, especially with characters like Power Pack and Kid Kaiju. Yeah, I believe I did a story about this a while back that they were looking at moving into doing more animation. And at the time, I think I said that no, no, I don't want that. Go away. Forget it. Uh, I think they're doing it as a cost saving thing, because they've had so many of these movies come out and disappoint. I think they're looking and saying, hey, maybe we could do animation and at least we wouldn't lose as much money that way. So I think this would be a good move for them. Power Pack would be a fun thing. I don't really know Kid Kaiju, so I can't speak to that, but I remember Power Pack from back in the day. And that could be a fun thing. I've said before that I think they ought to do more animation for Star Wars. Do a Star Wars animated movie of some kind. I've said repeatedly, I think that would be a good idea. They could probably put an animated thing together fairly inexpensively and put it out, and it could actually make some money. Which, like I don't think that Grogu and Mandalorian movie is going to do well, if it ever even gets made. Okay. All right, we'll move along here. Where we're at, what, about 45 minutes? Let me take a drink of water right quick. Hold on. Okay. All right. Now, this is from Variety. Dark Horse Comics drops Neil Gaiman after sexual assault allegations and cancels Anansi Boys series. Neil Gaiman has been dropped by Dark Horse Comics following a bombshell New York Magazine cover story in which several women accused the Sandman and Coraline author of sexual assault. In a post on X Friday night, the publisher wrote, quote, Dark Horse takes seriously the allegations against Neil Gaiman, and we are no longer publishing his works, confirming that the Anansi Boys comic series and collected volumes have been canceled. Gaiman denied the allegations brought forth in the January 13th story, writing on his blog the next day, quote, I have never engaged in non-consensual sexual activity with anyone, ever, unquote. Representatives for Gaiman did not immediately respond to Variety's request for comment regarding Dark Horse Comics' statement. Amazon's TV adaptation of Anansi Boys, which is expected to release this year, had not been affected by the allegations at the time of the New York Magazine story. Variety has reached out to Amazon for further comment. Back in July, Tortoise Media broke the news that Gaiman had been accused of sexual assault by two women and released a six-part podcast, Master, which covered the allegations of five women. However, the New York Magazine article amplified the story as the first major news organization to corroborate the full extent of the allegations against Gaiman. In the New York Magazine piece titled, There Is No Safe Word, reporter Lila Shapiro spoke to 8 women who had similar experiences with Gaiman, 4 of which also participated in Tortoise's podcast. The accusers that spoke to New York Magazine included a babysitter for Gaiman and his ex-wife, Amanda Palmer's child, a caretaker for Gaiman's property in Woodstock, New York, a fan who met the author when she was 18, and a woman who alleged he attempted to sexually assault her on his tour bus. Many of the women alleged that Gaiman had a preference for rough sex and BDSM activities that had not been consented to beforehand. In his statement, Gaiman expressed regret for how he's handled some relationships, writing that, quote, I was emotionally unavailable while being sexually available, self-focused and not as thoughtful as I could or should have been, unquote. However, he denied any allegations of sexual assault, saying, quote, I'm not willing to turn my back on the truth, and I can't accept being described as someone I am not and cannot and will not admit to doing things I didn't do, unquote. I would point out, that back when the whole Me Too thing was taking off, of course, you had all these male feminists coming out of the woodwork to say, women's accusations must be believed. And of course, he was one of those people saying that stuff at the time. Of course, now that the accusations are being leveled at him, he's singing a different tune. Of course, he wouldn't be the first to do that, though. Since Tortoise's bombshell report in July, several of Gaiman's film and TV projects have been affected. Season 3 of Prime Video's Good Omens will now end with one 90-minute episode, with Gaiman not part of the production. Disney's paused production on its film adaptation of The Graveyard Book, and Netflix canceled Dead Boy Detectives, though it's unclear if it was related to the allegations. The Sandman Season 2 is still expected to release this year on Netflix. So I guess Netflix already spent the money. So they're like, yeah, we're not trashing this thing. We spent too much money on it. It's not that surprising considering everything that's happening. I just kind of have a hard time feeling much sympathy for Gaiman, as I mentioned, because of what he said back when these kind of accusations were being leveled at other people. And as I say, he's not the first one. There were several people in the music world. Like I think one of the first ones who got a big dose of that was it Dr. Dre. It was some hip hop artist. I think it was Dr. Dre, but I might be wrong. Who said you came out and said something like, not me. I didn't do these things, which prompted the hashtag yes you or something like that. But because then people came out, some women came out and said that yeah, you did it to me, and you know, I don't know what else to say about it other than it's not surprising. But the guy's got plenty of money, I'm guessing already, and Although he is divorced, I think, so who knows how much he lost, but that's his problem. Okay. Um, okay, I've just got a couple of stories left here, so we'll do these. And these are kind of related because they're both actually relate to Dungeons and Dragons. So let me bring this up. I don't know if you've heard, but D&D is pretty much current D&D has a problem with orcs. Okay, D&D's doomed attempts, and this, what is this? This is wargamer.com. D&D's doomed attempts to make orcs unproblematic will please no one. The earliest version of orcs in D&D was a simple, violent threat to civilization that needed to be pacified by brave adventurers, which unfortunately echoed stereotypes used against tribal and indigenous human cultures. The latest version of the player's handbook gives orcs a sunnier disposition, but this only makes it more obvious how much the core of the fantasy of D&D relies on the existence of uncomplicated baddies that players can bash without remorse. In the very first white box edition of Dungeons and Dragons, the orcs warranted 4 paragraphs of exposition and 1 table in the Monsters and Treasure pamphlet. The text is given over almost entirely to the military capabilities of orc settlements, how orc villages are defended by a ditch and palisade, while cave complexes have sentries, how likely a village is to be led by a high level fighting man or magic user, the odds of encountering a defended orc wagon train. What little is said about orc culture and biology is lifted from Tolkien. Quote, orcs do not like full daylight, reacting as do goblins, suffering a penalty to attack and morale. Though the number of different tribes of orcs can be varied as desired, the only advice given to the game master is that orcs will, quote, attack orcs of different tribes on sight unless they are under command of a strong monster and pass an obedience check. D&D at this primordial stage was an experimental campaign system that had branched off from the fantasy appendix to the medieval miniature wargame Chainmail. The orcs actually get a generous write-up compared to some other species. The description for giants begins, giants act as mobile light catapults with a 20-foot range. Monsters are functional, and that function is combat. Yeah, I mean, it came from a war game. Yeah. When considered as groups, they are considered by a military analyst, not an anthropologist. And for the purposes of original D&D, that was enough. If you've read any fantasy literature, you know what to do with them. Monsters lurk in lairs and dungeons and prey upon the unwary unless they're under the command of a great evil that can rally them to the banner of darkness. They are a necessary test for the heroes to reveal their prowess. D&D's orcs grew beyond their simple origins, as just about all sentient D&D races receive their own unique history, culture, and religion over the years. Still, D&D was narrowly focused on mimicking a particular mode of fantasy fiction, somewhere between Tolkien and the Wild West, where pieces went through violence and both the wilds and the sentient people inhabiting it are antagonistic forces that must be subdued. I'm not calling that a flaw. The first ever tabletop RPG had to come from somewhere, and the aesthetic taste and interest of Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson are as valid as anyone else's. But the less abstract the worlds of D&D became, the more awkward it was to accommodate the functional role of orcs and other monsters, threats to be conquered with their expanding complexity within the narrative. Orc villages imply orc civilians and orc children. Orc culture implies orc values, orc subjectivity, and orcs with as much right to live as the player characters. For light fantasy entertainment, choosing to simply ignore this moral dimension or to even embrace it with ironic detachment is fine, provided everyone playing is having a good time. No one has a responsibility to make their leisure time morally challenging, but attempts to make orcs more rounded and realistic run counter to that disengagement. The orcs in the new D&D 2024 Player's Handbook are a smiling family of nomads. They have children, elders, well cared for horses, and pet hawks. We're supposed to recognize them as us rather than other. But D&D, considered purely as a rule system, is not a game about creating intercultural harmony in a multiracial community. The rules have become more expansive since 1974, but their focus remains consistent. They still center violence, exploration, acquisition, and growth through adventure. The modern D&D classes might have more interesting abilities than the fighting man and magic user, but everything on the character sheet with mechanical weight is a tool for navigating a world that exists to be conquered. The 2024 Player's Handbook Orcs are presented to us as whole people. But to actually use the rules of D&D, we must not think too hard about the personhood of whoever we're slaughtering in our latest adventure. Making orcs more than mindless antagonists in a world that requires henchmen and goons simply passes the buck to someone else. Hobgoblins, bugbears, giants, whoever. Even if the orcs are no longer stereotypical savages, the narrative and mechanical role of justifiable punching bag must be filled. D&D's rules aren't designed to facilitate an honest, satisfying, or educational engagement with intercultural exchange or peace treaties or post-war processes of truth and reconciliation. Someone must be waiting beyond the walls with violent intent for the game to function. Right. I mean, you got to have somebody to fight. And to be clear, I don't really want D&D to be honest about the cycles of violence embedded in its game world. The closest media I've encountered to a realistic depiction of a D&D adventure is Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian. It follows a nameless protagonist as he falls in with a band of bounty hunters on the Mexican-American border, tracking, murdering, and scalping Native Americans. It's a long, stark book, a quiet elegy to the indifferent beauty and cruelty of the American landscape, punctuated by sharp explosions of harrowing violence. And it would make a very, very bleak D&D campaign. To me, the new orcs look like frontier folk, more like the pilgrims who took the Oregon Trail than the Native American nations deposed from their lands and forced to walk the Trail of Tears. They have been recognized as equals, not because the adventure's worldview has expanded to encompass the way of the orc, but because the orc is now assimilated into the way of the adventurer. Hmm. That's an interesting article. And like he says, okay, let's say you don't make orcs monsters anymore and you're not going to fight them. Like you said, you're just going to have to find another race of monsters to fight, like bugbears or hobgoblins or whatever, or make one up. Just make up some other race to fight or some other species to fight. And as he says, if you don't have someone like that, really, what is the game? What are you doing? But I have another story related to this, how they're trying to make monsters more cuddly and cute. And this is from thefandommental.com. Let's see. In the new Dungeons and Dragons Monster Manual, more is unfortunately less. Can I get rid of this? Yeah. Okay. The final core book of the Dungeons and Dragons 2024 rule books is almost here. The Monster Manual. Monster Manuals, bestiaries, or bestiaries, excuse me, creature tomes, etc., have always been my favorite of the core books in any TTRPG, thanks to the key world building they offer, as well as being a great toolkit for the DMs wanting new and fun ways to challenge or kill their players. With the new edition of the fifth edition Monster Manual, Wizards wanted to update the existing monster roster to allow for higher level play and reflect D&D's new emphasis on accessibility. As such, the roster for the new Monster Manual isn't much different from the one we got in 2014. What we did get in this were new ways to approach these existing monsters, as well as various Apex versions to allow for more high-level play. Is it a useful tool? Yes. Is it better than the books it's replacing? That's complicated. So apparently, a big thing is most of the creatures in the book, they have what are called these Apex versions that are more powerful than the run-of-the-mill versions of these creatures. Hold on a moment. Let me take a drink of water. Okay. No. Okay. Let's see. These are new versions of things like elementals, revenants, or oozes that let them stay in use at higher levels. The blob of annihilation is up there as a CR-23 ooze that sends people to the astral plane when it dies. Animal lords look much more normal, but are actually celestials with powerful spells, shape shifting, and legendary abilities that make them incredibly hard to hit. My personal favorite is the Haunting Revenant, a new form of undead that animates an entire ruin or building into a malevolent monster hell bent on luring in unwary travelers and trapping them within its decaying walls. Not every edition of the Monster Manual is aimed at epic level play. Almost every monster has gotten new variants that allow for DMs to mix things up a bit when using them in their game. There's feral primeval owlbears, flaming skeletons, boule pups, and even new versions of old standbys like gnolls and goblins. Of course, they didn't just add some new shining variants of your favorite monster. They have also tweaked and largely optimized every beastie up to and including the Tarrasque. Most of these are little tweaks to hitch points or speed that players honestly won't notice. Every monster still has an alignment, though technically this is a suggestion, and they also all now have Dark Souls boss subtitles. Some of my favorites include Magmen, Auteus, and Flumps. Some of these changes, however, are more impactful, especially when it comes to some of the most iconic creatures in the game. The Gith. Gith lore is largely the same, though there's less emphasis on the difference between Githyanki and Githzerai. It may seem minor, but the new rulebook doesn't classify Gith as humanoid. Instead, they're now classified as aberrations like their former masters, the Illithids. Both kinds of Gith also get new forms in the Githyanki Necromancer and the Githzerai Scion. And also, I don't know if how many people realize it, by the way, but Githyanki and Githzerai, those are actually references to George R. R. Martin's writing, I believe. I believe he actually came up with those terms. I know he used them in a book, one of his novels that I read that was done back in the 70s, I think. Liches. The biggest change to the Lich is entirely about nomenclature. Instead of the Greek word phylactery, which has caused some controversy in the world of fantasy due to its association with tefillin used in Judaism for prayer, the Monster Manual now uses the term spirit jar. It functions the same, and I'm not sure if this change will supersede 50 years of precedent, but it's an example of wizards working to be as inclusive as possible. Okay, and here's the one I really, really got at me Sphinxes. Sphinxes get a huge change in the new Monster Manual. By doing away with the classic gendered sphinxes, the Androsphinx and Gynosphinx. Instead, there are sphinxes of wonder, secrets, lore, and valor. They are also multicolored now and classified as celestials instead of monstrosities. This change in form and classification reflects more the way sphinxes are depicted in Hinduism and Buddhism rather than the Greek Egyptian influence of previous editions. There's no mention if the Andro and Gyno forms still exist, though they're listed on the conversion table to be equivalent to the Valor and Lore sphinxes, respectively. And as you can see, sphinxes now, instead of this monster that's like got the head of a human, but and wings and a lion's body, they're now these like uh, kitty cats that have they're like rainbow colored, Skittles colored. It's obviously just an attempt to make this thing more how shall I say inclusive. Let's just go with that, inclusive. It's not really the word I'd use, but I'll go with that one. Okay, Rakshasas. Rakshasas are mechanically the same as before, but they've lost most of their uniqueness. Instead of being eagle tiger-headed people with backward hands, they can have any animal head. The art in the game shows a tiger, a crocodile, an ibex, and a bird. The backwards hands are just one possible quirk they can have rather than their main identifier. This combined with the hyper-condensed lore every monster suffers from means they're just not as interesting as before. Orcs. Orcs don't get any space in the new monster manual because you see they're not monsters anymore, they're people now. In the 2015 version, they gave one of the iconic D&D monsters 4 pages of lore, stat blocks, and art. Now they only show up in the appendix and the tables that let you convert them to a new monster. Orcs have been a thorny subject lately, but even previous D&D books have been able to thread the orc needle without leaving them out entirely. Other races like goblins, kobolds, and hobgoblins are included in this book, but not orcs. Their omission is profoundly disappointing considering the amount of creativity shown in updating the other creatures in the book. Due to orc status as playable characters, much of their lore has been shifted to the player's handbook, hence their absence in the monster manual. Okay. They go on, but there's not really any specific monsters they discuss. So I'll go ahead and stop it there. Because yeah, we're at an hour 5 minutes, so I'll go ahead and wrap it up. I do want to thank everyone who tuned in for the stream, including those who will catch it on the rewatch. Please do like the stream and do sub to the channel and check out some of my other videos while you're here. So what have I got coming up? Okay, so I'm working on a video right now. Top 5 Marvel villains for Superman. In other words, the 5 Marvel villains I think would make the best opponents for Superman if they were in the DCU. Hopefully that will be out tomorrow. Tuesday, I should be doing my Trek Talk as usual on Tuesday at 5 p.m. And I will be starting season 2 of the original series, which I believe which episode is that going to be? I think it's going to be a mock time. Let me double check right quick here. Let's see. Oh, no, it's going to be Cat's Paw, actually. Cat's Paw. Okay. And then let's see. And then yeah, I'll be should be streaming next Sunday as well. Not sure if I'll get anything in there in between. We'll see. But again, thanks to everyone who tuned in, and I hope you all have a good night.